All right, we are back here talking the captain on the podcast, wrapping up our coverage of the series with episode 7, which aired on Thursday night. I figure I began the captain coverage with one Fred. I'm bringing the other one in to wrap it all up. Phil Fraietta is here this time. Phil, how are you?
I'm good, Mike. How are you?
Pretty good. I got to start out here. Obviously, now we've seen the entire thing, all 7 episodes. How you feel about what we got?
I enjoyed it. I thought it was great for a Yankee fan, though. So I'm not sure if the non-Yankee fan really got much out of it, but the Yankee fan, especially the Yankee fan my age, I'm 33 years old, so I came into baseball just as Derek Jeter came into baseball. So for someone my age, it was perfect. Exactly what I wanted to see.
Yeah, I gotta say, for most of this thing, I was kind of in and out. The last that was I feel like we got a lot of interesting stuff we don't really never wasn't really expecting to get here. So I was happy with how they ended it.
Yeah, the last episode I learned a lot about Jeter that I never knew because despite him being such a big name, his private life has remained private even after retirement.
Yeah, we'll get more into all this stuff in a minute here too. I'm also impressed at how much they went into the Marlins stuff too. I was not expecting that to be as huge a topic as it was in this episode.
Yeah, I figured they were just gonna brush that off, but he, to his credit, addressed it head on.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to hear.
And on night of recording here, we are recording on Sunday night during the Yankee Red Sox game here. Derek Jeter was on the K Rod cast for about half an hour with A Rod and Michael K. We both check us out here. Anything interesting coming up to you from that conversation?
I can't really say anything that I found to be too interesting came out. Obviously, both of them tried to downplay their severity of their rift over the years, and I expected that. So no, nothing too interesting. It's nice to see Jeter and A-Rod in the same room, and I think we all kind of expected that um, the rift was played up by the media a lot.
Yeah, I'd say two things I noticed from that coming out of it. Number one, I thought it was interesting that Jeter basically said he did this for his kids, so his daughters could see this one day, and that was the reason why he agreed to do it. And also, I also thought it was interesting that he asked A Rod beforehand to be in it personally, so I thought that was something I didn't expect that we get right away.
Yeah, that was interesting, and I actually get where Jeter's coming from with that. You know, without getting too personal, I have young kids, and I have a Derek Jeter figurine, and my son, asked me who that is, and it occurred to me that well, he doesn't know who Derek Jeter is, and Derek Jeter's kids, they don't know Derek Jeter the ball player, so I understand where he's coming from there, and I think that maybe the documentary is a good way for, especially for a Yankee fan, to introduce the younger generation into the Derek Jeter era.
Yeah, for sure. I also thought the other thing coming up was obviously like Michael K had a good question at the end about like the old timers day situation. Jeter said basically like, "Hey, like I'm not considering myself an old timer yet. Like I don't want to play in the game." Basically said, but like never say never. He'll show up one day. A. Robbie said, "I have not been invited by the Yankees," so I think that's not surprising me. I'm curious if that will change anytime soon.
Yeah, look, I think that's, if the Yankees really aren't inviting A-Rod to old timers games, then the Yankees are, in my opinion, not doing it right. I know that they had a falling out. I know it wasn't the best relationship ever, but I think that the fans would appreciate seeing A-Rod. At least I know I would. This is a guy who, he delivered 2 MVPs and a World Series ring that he was single-handedly largely responsible for that postseason. He was just off the charts good. So to me, if you're going to invite guys like, the Shane Spencers of the world, I don't understand why you can't invite Alex Rodriguez.
I feel like this is one I think they might soften their stance over time. Maybe you can see maybe like 5 years. They say, "Oh, now it's time to bring A Rod back." I think the weight end of them is still too fresh in their minds than to get over themselves. Like, okay, A Rod can come tonight, come to it this year.
Yeah, maybe. I do agree with Jeter though that I think him and A-Rod are probably a little too young for old timers day anyway right now.
I mean, David Wright basically said the same thing for the Met one they're bringing back this year. He said, I'm too young for this thing." It's like I will do one in the future. It's not right now.
Yeah, I think that I agree with. But if I was the Yankees, I'd want A-Rod back in the stadium. I think overall he's a guy who, controversial, sure, but I think the fans would appreciate seeing him.
Yeah, I do too. Let's get to the captain here. And obviously, where they left off, episode 6, they didn't leave us much left with him. We said most of basically fast forward to 14, got the Jeter's final game here. Anything from that little bit like catch your attention here?
Well, just going into from 6 to 7, I noticed how, and I don't think they were wrong to do this. They kind of jumped from the broken ankle at the end of 2012 to basically his last game in 14, and that's probably right because at least the way I have always viewed it, that night he broke his ankle was kind of the real end of Derek Jeter as we knew him, and I knew he did the retirement tour, and I know why he did it. That jumped out to me. I know that's leaning on to episode 6 now, but his idea of, hey, I want to go out on my own terms. I don't want the Yankees to force me out. I thought that was interesting. But I like the way in the documentary that they kind of just glossed over what was a forgettable season for Jeter, and really we all know he shouldn't have been there. It was just him not wanting to go out laying on the ground with a broken ankle.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I did think with he basically admitted that like this is the first time his career is actually nervous before a game in terms of like, oh, like I didn't want this moment to find me, and it does. He still comes through anyway. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, yeah, and that whole situation. I did think it was. I was surprised to see Buck. Actually, I was surprised that Buck was interviewed there and kind of admitted that I know I should have walked him, but I didn't walk him because it was his last game.
Yeah, I believe the blind Buck said basically like we wanted to actually be able to leave the stadium that night. So I give credit.
Yeah,
Buck knows the situation.
because watching it live, I mean, you were like, they're really going to pitch to this guy, and I know that at that time Jeter was a shell of himself, and he wasn't the kind of player to be getting intentional walks, but the situation called for an intentional walk there. But I credit Buck for understanding the situation, knowing it was bigger than the game, and doing what he did.
It's funny, it's the exact opposite of what the Yankees themselves did against the Tigers late in earlier this season when Miguel Cabrera was coming up for a chance for a 3,000 hit, and Aaron Boone intentionally walked him in a spot where like he could have pitched.
I remember that. I was watching that game. Yeah. I mean, the one difference I guess I'll give you is in that game that was an early in the season game. You don't know what's going to happen. By this point in 2014, if the Yankees were, I believe, eliminated, and I think Baltimore had. If they weren't eliminated, they weren't going anywhere either. But it was a kind of a meaningless game.
Yeah, that's true here. And then we do sort of get into Jeter post retirement, and I did think it was like interesting to see Jeter take us into what it was like for him to be a family man and how he always wanted to have girls and all that stuff. So I thought that was a nice insight to a side of Jeter we never see publicly. Because he's even said on the K Rock cast, and he's like, I'm a private guy. I wanted to keep stuff private. So pick of him to show this to the audience here in the last episode.
Yeah, they really showed a lot about his family life, and I had no idea the kind of issues his wife went through to give birth to the children. So that was interesting and scary, really, to see her and him both put that out there for the public about how sounds like how close she was to really passing away. So that's it's definitely out of character for Jeter to put that out there. But I guess, like you said tonight, the purpose of this is for his kids to one day watch it.
Yeah, he did. It's a good point, and we do see also plenty of like a good reflection of his parents. He's like, oh, like how Jeter is becomes sort of like what they did. And they did open the episode with another family note, talk about how like when he was kids, like he and his parents had like contracts they fill out, like he has to do all these things in order to play sports and so on. It's interesting to sort of see how they influence how he becomes the father.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Jeter is obviously, you've heard the fairy tale and all that, but to me, the thing about Jeter that really stands out and you're never going to see again, unfortunately, is youth sports are so much different now. There's just no way that a kid like that would even stay in Kalamazoo public school. A talent like that, they would have moved him off to some private school in Florida so he could play baseball year round. In today's youth sport arena where they're specializing kids when they're 8 years old. So to see a guy like Jeter, public school in the middle of nowhere in Michigan, playing baseball, that's and putting things before baseball, academics, and stuff like that. that's something that I don't think we're going to see very much anymore.
Yeah, because if 8-year-old Derek Jeter is coming up today in Kansas, Michigan, he would have been spotted like an AAU coach. He would have been recruited to play on travel teams all summer long. And then it was oh, like you're right, go down to Florida, play at IMG Academy, and like play there for 3 years before you get drafted. As opposed to like him staying in the Michigan public school system for the rest of his teenage years.
Absolutely, that's the way it works now. And you wouldn't, it's rare now that too that you'd have a parent who says, "All right, I want you to focus on school," rather than, "Hey, this my kid's got a chance. We got to focus on baseball."
Yeah, absolutely here. And we did get a little bit on Jeter reaching the Hall of Fame. And Jeter did say on the K-Rod conversation tonight that basically the impetus for this is like he had people in the room to film the call, which he saw in the episode. They did a good job cutting between that and the footage of him getting the call from the Yankees being drafted here. I did think it was interesting that they didn't really try and drag the one writer who didn't vote for him, which is something I think Joe Chow brought out last week. They didn't drag the writer who didn't vote him 6 for the MVP and cost him that in 2006. So Jeter said personally, I remember he said like, doesn't really bother me as much. Like it's really hard to get consensus to get everybody on board with it. So I thought it was interesting to talk about it in the K-Rod spot, not in the actual episode.
Yeah, well, with I think there's two things there. The MVP situation was, in my opinion, just that was, I don't want to say worse, but less defensible. Because if I recall, that guy put him sixth. Said, came out with some comment about how he had no idea what his numbers were for the year. So that's just a guy not doing his job. The Hall of Fame situation is, as I'm sure a lot of your listeners know, I don't agree with it, but for some reason, the baseball writers have determined that nobody deserves the fame of 100%, except Mariano Rivera, that they decided that they'd let Mariano in with 100%. So can't be stunned that Jeter didn't get the 100%. Of course, I don't think anybody could in good faith tell you Derek Jeter's not a first ballot Hall of Famer. Of course he was, but for whatever reason, the writers have held on to that stupid rule over the years.
Yeah, and I mean, seeing the call itself was cool, and seeing the backstory behind it, how Jeter was sitting like, "Oh, I'm expecting a call," and then like his mom is there, it's like, "Oh, like should I call you at this point or something like that?" That was fun to watch.
Yeah, and I was surprised too to see Jeter really show. He was, for his entire career, team, 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 team. It's all I care about is the team. All I care about is winning. He let himself show a little bit there with the Hall of Fame and how grateful he was to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. And you can't blame the guy for that. That's a tremendous accomplishment.
Yeah, not like I think it's like you're in the hundreds of players all time if if you're inducted in the Cooperstown. This is not a big fraternity.
Yeah, and he you could tell that he truly appreciated it, more so than Jeter, in my opinion, ever let on as a player. That was something that he cared about. Ironically, A-Rod seems like he was the one who was probably growing up dreaming of the Hall of Fame, and now he'll likely never get that honor.
Yeah, and Michael K also did ask you about the one writer didn't put him in the Hall of Fame on the first ballot, and he said, "Hey, it was my fault I didn't find it." And I think Jeter made a point. There's like it doesn't really matter the fact that like I didn't get 100%. The thing about it more is that like no accountability, which you and I have railed against this all the time. It's like, and I think a lot of writers do feel this way. It's like if you're not gonna put that vote in, like make your ballot public and own it. Don't just hide behind an anonymity.
I agree. Yeah, come out and explain why you believe that the 100% rule needs to be adhered to in 2022 or 2020, whenever that vote was casted. Explain that to us, because I don't get it. I don't think you get it. I've heard some arguments in the past of, well, if Ted Williams wasn't a 100% guy, how could Derek Jeter be? Well, Ted Williams should have been. In my opinion, we shouldn't just keep repeating the same mistake over and over and over again.
Yeah,
so I was happy to see the writers realize it with Mariano, but hopefully more players get that 100% number.
Yeah, I mean, it's the argument. Oh, Babe Ruth didn't get 100% induction, therefore nobody can. I think it's a stupid argument because like it's not your fault that somebody in the 1930s didn't vote Babe Ruth first ballot Hall of Fame.
Someone made a mistake in the 1930s. People made a lot of mistakes in the 1930s. The documentary touches on this a lot. Baseball obviously has a bad history with race. And those were mistakes that people made in the 1930s. I don't think we should keep repeating mistakes that people made in the past.
Yeah, for sure. And we did a little bit on the Players Tribune as well, which was Jeter's company. And considering we spent a lot of documentary talking about how Jeter felt the media was mischaracterizing like key elements of his career. Important to mention here that he does found this as his sort of outlet to have players have a direct voice to the general public here. And this is something that's still going well this day. I don't think he's actively involved with it anymore.
That was I don't remember who said it in the documentary. I think it was Verducci about how brilliant it was for Jeter to do that. It really took a power that Jeter has always believed the media had and took it away from them. Now if a writer says, well, player X thinks Y, player X can say, no, I don't, and here's what I actually think. Players Tribune will publish it, and Twitter helps with that too, of course. But yeah, I think the Players Tribune is a good source for understanding what do players really believe.
Yeah, it's true. It's certainly a good thing. Especially like a lot of these like athletes, especially when they're making free agent decisions in the NBA, have gone to use the Players Tribune a lot. So I think valuable source there. Also, I think the most interesting part of the documentary, like in this episode, was Jeter pursuit of ownership of the Marlins, and we get some background on how like the relationship with Bruce Sherman was basically just a shotgun marriage of, oh, like I need a guy who's got money. Here's money. I mean, this is seeing like all the work that Jeter had going on trying to rebuild that organization while at the same time deal with a lot of like intense personal drama in his family life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought that the documentary makers did a good job there of understanding who the audience is. So, and what I mean by that is, this is not a documentary that's airing on CNBC. So I think it's hard for the average guy to realize, obviously, Derek Jeter is very well off financially, but he is nowhere near wealthy enough to buy a baseball team. And they try to make that clear that he's rich, but there's a whole different level when you start talking about guys like Sherman. So the documentary makes that clear that Jeter kind of needed a guy like that, and it's obviously unfortunate how it ended.
Yeah, it is because basically Jeter I think says like maybe something I didn't think about as much of my career in terms of making these connections, and he basically gets lumped together. They buy the Marlins, they have to do a fire sale immediately, and they do a good job sort of like restocking the farm system, and Jeter's doing good community outreach, and then we get to the point where he basically says like I left because their vision for how they wanted to run the team disagree with my vision of it, and we talked about this I think back in March when news first had basically the reports were that Jeter wanted them to spend a little more money to try and be competitive, and the owners did not want to do that. So it makes sense that Jeter pulled himself out of that situation because he said basically like, I don't want my name beyond a brand that's not prioritizing winning like I would.
Yeah, we talked about that back in March on this podcast. Jeter, he wants to win, and I respected him for saying I'm not going to be a part of this charade. That's really what it is. It's a charade down there. There's no interest in winning. 2020 was a building block for them. I know they had a down year in 21, but and Mike, you see more of the Marlins than I do. They've got some really, really good young arms on that team, and they should be surrounding those young arms with talent.
But they're not.
But they're not, and I'm sure that those young arms will be traded in a few years to some other contenders like the Yankees, or probably not the Mets because they're in the division, but the Dodgers and so on and so forth.
Yeah, because I mean, you look at the way the Marlins are built right now. I mean, they have a lot of intriguing prospects on the pitching side. I mean, they brought they even really mentioned the Marcell Ozuna trade because he's a controversial like figure there. But Sandy Alcantara, the pieces they got back in that trade, he's been the NL Cy Young front runner. They have a lot of young pitching there. They have some good pieces in the minors, but like this is an organization where they literally is begging for like just a couple of bats to like be invested at the big level. And Derek Jeter, they wanted to do that, but the Marlins at this point did not want to spend more money because I think they are still concerned about their books, and that's the big separator here.
Yep, and it's a shame because they really do have some young talent. That like when drawing a blank on his name now, but pitching the All-Star game.
Alcantara.
Alcantara, yeah, there you go. Yeah, he was unbelievably impressive. I as an American League fan, I don't see much of these guys, but I saw him in the All-Star game, and immediately recognize that guy's special.
Yeah, that guy is going to win the NL Cy Young Award this year.
He probably will, and deserves it.
Absolutely. So that's basically where we left it here. And like you left it open ended about what he could do next. I mean, K-Rod asked about it on the broadcast tonight. He said, like, I don't know yet. I got ideas. I got time. I'm trying to raise my daughters right now. So I think for where it is in terms of where he is in his life, I feel like this is pretty complete. I don't think you have many more like public, like facing chapters for Jeter going forward here.
No, I would imagine. Look, I don't know if he's going to try and get back in baseball or not. Seems like he's pretty content just being a family man. I think you're right. I think the only public facing things you're really going to see are those few times that he makes his return to Yankee Stadium. In September, I know they got a Derek Jeter tribute night. I'll be there. I've got a ticket. So he'll be there. And I'm sure they'll bring him around. Hopefully they get to a point where they can bring him around once a year, like they were able to do with Mantle and Yogi and Whitey Ford and guys like that. I think that would be great for the fans.
Yeah, I'm sure eventually, like, I mean, Michael K brought up to him on there. He's like, hey, you don't have to play in the old timers game. You do the Joe DiMaggio, show up in the suit and wave at everybody and just hang out. You don't have to actually play in the game. I could see that being a possibility a couple of years.
Yeah, I think, and if you're the Yankees, I think that you want to be in a situation where, you're getting Jeter and Posada and Mariano and Andy and Bernie and Tino, and you get these guys to show up year after year, even if ideally playing, but certainly just show up and let the what are now, like I said, the fans like me who are now passing the game on to the next generation. That's how you do it. Things like Old Timers Day.
Yeah, and let's take a look at it. Now we got the complete product here. We got in all 7 episodes. Like, how would you grade this thing? How do you think this documentary stacks up?
Well, I think you got to give it 2 grades. I think there's the Yankee fan grade and there's the everybody else grade. So for the Yankee fan, I think it's an A. It's everything the Yankee fan wants. But for the average guy, I'd say somewhere in the B plus range. So to the Yankee fan, there's just nothing better than watching 96, 98, 99, just the dominance, the, like they say in the documentary, the every break always managing to go their way. The Timo Perez doesn't run, the ball doesn't go over the fence. Luis Sojo hits the 5-hopper, but it goes up the middle. It doesn't go to the shortstop. All that stuff. Jeffrey Mayer reaches over, and Mark Langston strikes out Tino, but they call it a ball, so on and so forth. So I think seeing that stuff over and over again is you never gets old as a Yankee fan, especially a Yankee fan my age who has those memories as a childhood.
Yeah, I think on my side, as a non-Yankee fan, I think going into this one, I was gonna say C plus. I figure it's fine, it's passable. Like, there's not a lot here, but we got enough new stuff here in terms of like stuff that like the director Randy Wilkins did a good job getting out of Jeter, some of these things. I think it's a B. I think it's fine. It was not going to be the last dance. It's never going to be the last dance, but I think it's solid. I mean, obviously there's stuff I would like to see him explore more, but with creative control being in the Jeter camp and having his agency heavily involved in it too, like I can't say there's some stuff I'm not surprised that it's not addressed much more.
Yeah, the last episode is the one where I feel like you learn the most about Derek Jeter. The first 6, I don't know. There were a couple of stories here and there that I didn't know. Like, for instance, I had never heard the A-Rod went over to him in the rain delay story. That was the first time I ever heard that. But for the most part, you kind of knew what was going to happen, right? You knew that the Yankees are going to win in 1998. Everything goes great. And you knew he's Mr. November, and the bunt and they throw the ball over, Mariano throws the ball away, all that stuff. So I agree with you on that. We didn't learn a whole ton until the last episode, but I think in the last episode we learned enough to push it into that B category.
Yeah, because my issue throughout was also like we lost a lot of like Derek Jeter's like shortcomings on the playing field in terms of like we didn't really ask him about what happened, like how it felt when the guys left in 01 that he basically grew up with for the most part, and asking sort of like what happened those years from like 04 to like 09 to 08 when they didn't really win. Like there was stuff we just didn't ask him about that bothered me, but like getting what we got to in these episode 7 did help a lot.
Yeah, I agree, and that did bother me too. I did that. That was probably the thing about the documentary I disliked the most was the just complete gloss over from the 05, 06, 07, 08, and even 09 seasons. 09, they kind of just fast forwarded to the playoffs. Uh, but yeah, I thought that was a little bit of a gloss over. I think it was worthwhile to talk about those seasons and what happened. But that kind of was kind of glossed over.
Yeah, all 7 episodes of the documentary now out on ESPN Plus. So you have that service, you can sign up, see them live there. I think if you do not have ESPN Plus, I think it's like on the website. I think that you have to watch, I think like with commercials. I think ESPN Plus versus without commercials. So if you want to check it out, especially if you're a Yankee fan, I would recommend it. If you will have a fun trip down nostalgia lane, if you have not checked it out already.
Yeah, if you're a Yankee fan who was born in the late 80s, early 90s, you 1000, or Yankee fan born ever, but especially in that time period, you 1000% should watch it. These are, for me, that it's just reliving memories all the way from 95, Edgar Martinez, to the last walk-off hit. I remember all of it. So,
Absolutely, Phil. Thanks for all the time. Really appreciate it.
all right. Thanks, Mike.